exactly about my book on Andrew Jackson, but more precisely why I wrote a book about Andrew Jackson. And this is in lieu of the preface that isn't in the book. About 10 years ago, I stopped writing prefaces to books. I did this for a couple of reasons. One is that I always found prefaces kind of annoying. They seemed to get in front of the story, and I wanted to jump right to the story. But when I did, I always felt that I was missing something, as I certainly was. And another reason for this is that I teach at the University of Texas, and I teach students from the freshman level to the graduate level. And one of the things that I have to impress upon my graduate students is that they have to exercise a certain, what shall I say, time effectiveness in doing their reading. Many of them come to a graduate program in history with the naive assumption that this will be a great place to read history books. And I disabuse them of that idea fairly quickly because there's simply too many history books to read. They have to learn how to figure out what's in the history books without actually reading the books. There's not time. And so I remind them of something that was impressed upon me when I published my first book. It was a book that was published by Columbia University Press, and William Leuchtenberg was the editor of the series in which it was published. And he explained something that I should have figured out myself through my graduate education. But he said that it's much more important that you write a good preface than that you write a good book. Because especially if a book is published by a university press and you expect to have the normal kind of academic audience, the odds are that they will, if they have to choose, they'll read the preface rather than the book itself. And there are reasons for this, and the reasons have to do with the fact that academics are overloaded with, he said, imagine the person who's going to be reviewing this book. It'll be somebody who's given 500 words in the American Historical Review. And this person has a stack of blue books to grade, and various term papers and dissertations to read and committee assignments to do. And he's going to be juggling all of this stuff, and the only way that you can guarantee that he's going to get your point is if you put it in those first 3 pages. If you bury it in the 350 pages of the book, he might not get it. So I took this lesson, and for the next 10 years I wrote these prefaces. But I finally decided that that was sort of cheating because if I could say it in 3 pages, why did I bother writing the whole book? So I stopped doing it. And for about the last 10 years, I haven't been writing prefaces. Sometimes I wish I had. Sometimes I wish I was glad I hadn't. Since this book came out, it's been reviewed in a number of places. And I'm surprised at the number of reviewers who have missed the point of the book. Now, if I had taken time to write the preface and nailed down exactly what I was saying, then presumably they would have gotten the point. It can be a blessing, however, when reviewers miss the point of the book. One of the best reviews I ever got, the most useful review I ever got, was one that was written by Paul Johnson for a review of a biography I did of Theodore Roosevelt. Now, Paul Johnson apparently really liked Theodore Roosevelt, and he read enough of my book to infer that I at least kind of liked Theodore Roosevelt too. So he concluded that it must be a really good book. From the nature of the review, I could tell he didn't read it. However, he did give me the best one-line endorsement I've ever had. He said, every red-blooded American should read this book. Well, you can imagine what sentence I extracted, and now is it blazoned at the top of the paperback edition. Anyway, I'm going to provide for you the preface that's not in the book. And in prefaces, authors generally explain why they wrote the book and sort of what the major points or themes of the book are. The reason I wrote a book about Andrew Jackson was that I was faced with something of a historical and political puzzle. I knew enough history. I've been teaching American history for 25 years. Every year I teach a large lecture, a survey of American history. Sometimes I teach the first half of the American history course that goes from the colonial period up through the Civil War, and sometimes I teach the second half of the course. And I knew enough about American history to have gathered that Andrew Jackson had an enormous reputation during his time. Andrew Jackson, well, of all of the standard classifications, all of the normally labeled eras of American history, the colonial era, the Revolutionary era, the Civil War era, Reconstruction, Progressive era, the New Deal, Cold War. There's only one that's named for an individual, and that's the Jacksonian Era. Okay? There's a reason for that, which I will explain.